Okay, we're up to Ayin Dalit Amid Aleph, good Erev Shabbos to all. And we're in the middle of a Shiloh. Again, we're dealing with Perik. The title of the Perik is Perik Oral. The Perik began with an oral being unable to go ahead and eat Truma. We had a machlokus again by now between Rabbi Eliezer, who learns this from the Gezer Shava of Tashav Sacha from Karban Pesach. We had the Shita of Rabbi Akiva, who learned it from the pasuk of Tuma, right? That it says Ish Kiyeh Tzrua Izav, and he learned it from that pasuk. We had the Chiddush that then the reason why the oral can't eat it is because he's Tameh, which is fascinating, tremendous Chiddush. And now we had the Shaila whether a person could go ahead and eat it if he is a Ma'aser Sheni. He's an oral. Can an oral eat Ma'aser Sheni or not? We wanted to go ahead and prove from a Mishnah in Bikurim that in fact he could not, because it's not included as the differences between Bikurim and Truma and Ma'aser. We said Tana B'Shayir, and therefore we're still left with the Shaila, what's the halacha of an oral eating Ma'aser Sheni? We try to bring in other source, and we said that is not Ma'aser Dagan, it's Ma'aser Behema. We disagreed, and we said it's Ma'aser Rishon according to Rabbi Meir. The Meir holds Ma'aser Rishon has that you can't is Asaf Zorim, and therefore that's where we're holding. So we're on Ayin Dalit Amid Aleph, exactly where we're up to. I'll tell you. Toshma, I go down 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, about 14 lines down. Toshma. Again, we're trying to be Paishit to Shaila. Can an oral eat Ma'aser Sheni? Toshma, B'Tani Reb Chia bar Rav Midifti. Oral asa b'shtei maestros. An oral cannot eat 2 maestros. My lav echad ma'aser dagan ve'echad ma'aser behema. He can eat 2. So meaning one is ma'aser behema and one is ma'aser dagan. Ma'aser dagan referring to grain would be Ma'aser Sheni. So you see an oral cannot eat Ma'aser Sheni. Says Gemara hachanami Ma'aser Rishon. Here it's not Ma'aser Sheni. In fact, it's Ma'aser Rishon. And according to Rabbi, who holds Ma'aser Rishon is asa lizarim, and therefore it's not indicative of the din of oral whatsoever. Tashma, okay, we have a list over here, and I should go ahead and post this list. I should go ahead and post this list. So what we're going to do now is, okay, we're going to bring in a brisa, and the brisa is going to say the following. Oinin Tful Yom Mechusi Kippurim Oral. An oinin is a person, we know what it is, the day of the Kfura, Tful Yom. You went to the mikveh, you're waiting for Erev Shemesh. Mechusi Kippurim, fellas, is a person who has a tumah that comes from the body, a zav, a mitzora, a yoledes, where in order to get your full kapara to eat kachim, you could go ahead, you can't eat it until you bring your kapara, until you bring your carbon. Good? So it's the ascending order. Now, regarding Ma'aser Sheni, an oinin is asati Ma'aser Sheni, as we saw, and a truma, an oinin is muta, mutati truma, an oinin is mutati truma, and an oinin is muta to deal with the paraduma, to be involved in the paraduma. But Tful Yom is muta in Ma'aser Sheni. Conversely, it's aser in truma. A Tful Yom can't eat truma till the evening, and he's also muta b'para. Mechusi Kippurim is interesting. It's muta in Ma'aser Sheni. It's muta in what? In Truma, and it'll be Asr Para. Notice, fellas, in all these 3 things, you have 1 Isser and 2 Heter. Right? It's fascinating. And they're all different things. An Einin is here, Asr here, and muta over here. The Tful Yom is muta here, and Asr here. And the Mechusi Kippurim is muta here, and Asr here. Good? So the Gemara is going to ask a kasha. If an oral is muta, so it should say oral's muta Ma'aser Sheni, and then you would have the same configuration: muta here, and asa here. But the Gemara does not consider this at all. You know why he doesn't consider this at all? Because an oral must be asar, and then you wouldn't have that configuration because you'd have two isurim and 1 muta. If this is asar, then it's not similar to all the other ones. All the other ones only have 1 asr and 2 mutas. This one would have, if this was asa, it would be 2 asr and 1 muta. So this chart is really, really going to show you the Gemara. We'll keep it open and listen to the following question of the Gemara. Tosh says the Gemara. Again, we're trying to be patient the shaila whether an oinen wad is aser or muta in tit ma'aser sheni. Not an oinen, no oral. Tashma oinen aser b'ma'aser umuta b'truma u'b'para. That's line number 1. It's full yoim aser b'truma umuta b'para u'b'ma'aser. That's line number 2. He's aser b'truma and he's muta in these two. Mechusik Kippurim is aser b'para. He be aser b'yisik and para umuta b'truma ma'aser. V'm'isa that an oral is what would be what muta. Nisni oral asa b'truma, umuta b'para u'b'maisa. Nisni an oral be asa in truma, umuta b'para u'b'maisa. And there we'd have the same configuration, asa in one and 2 in the other. So it must be that what? Then it must be he is what? He is asa. And therefore you don't have the same configuration because we have 2 isurim. Says Gemara, Haitana de Rabbi Akiva he. This brisa is the Tana Rabbi Akiva, the mar b'leila oral kitame. In other words, Ken Zayin is really the oral is mutta. Ken Zayin, the oral really is mutta. But as we saw, fellas, Rabbi Akiva, whose source for the oral not eating truma is the pasuk from Tuma, who adin the oral inyan meiser, he won't be able to eat it because an oral is considered tamei, and therefore this brisa says it didn't list it because it goes going to Rabbi Akiva. The Tanya Rabbi Akiva Omer. Ish, the pasuk says, Ish, kiya sarua izav. The Rabbi says oral to include an oral. Okay, so therefore this is not an option because again it would not be the configuration would be totally wrong. So according to Rabbi Akiva, it works out. So now the Gemara wants to know, Rabbi Akiva, he says that what that an oral is what an oral is Uman Tana the Polyglot Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says that what a mechusik Kippurim is asa bipara. Who is that Tana who says that what that he will be mutta? There must be that an oral will be mutta bipara. Who is the Tana that says an oral will be mutta bipara? Says the Gemara Tana the Rabbi Yosef Bavli. It's the Tanakama of the Brisa of Yosef Bavli. He would hold that a mechusik Kippurim is mutta bipara. The Tanya Sreifas, the Sreifa of what? Of the para. Right now, if this is the Tana who says an oral would be mutta, guys. Sreifas of the Sreifa of the para. Now, what does that do with the oral? You're only discussing an oinen. So look at Rashi. Rashi's going to help us out. Says Rashi. It's right. The Rashi go up the Hachi Gasin and Tana the Yosef Ababli. Go up a little bit above the Gemara. Tanakam the Yosef Ababli. He the Amma Michusa Kippurim Kasha B'Para. He's the one who would argue with Rabbi Akiva and say that a Mechusa Kippurim, one who's missing his carbon to cleanse him to eat kachim, is Mutter B'Para. Hamasnisim do Kimnak Rabbi Akiva Ketani Mechusa Kippurim Pasal B'Para. And the brisa that we just saw that Mechusa Kippurim is Asa B'Para is Rabbi Akiva. Just like they argue by Mechusa Kippurim, the ihu pligi nami aleha bit oral, that he would also argue bit oral. In other words, we're zustelling the fact that over here, Mechusa Kippurim, guys, here, you see this? Look at the chart. Mechusa Kippurim, look at the para part, right? Mechusa Kippurim, para, the only one holds its asa would be Rabbi what? Rabbi Akiva. Who's the Tana who would hold an oral is mutta. Now the Brisa did not discuss an oral, but the Brisa assumed if you argue by Mechusa Kippurim, who adin you'd argue by oral as well. So if you hold Mechusa Kippurim is permitted, is mutta, who adin you would hold oral is mutta. That's the Tana of Yossi Abavli. That would explain that shita, guys. Okay, the Baruch Hashem, nice little chart. It goes ahead. It explains that shita. Okay, it says the Gemara Vaita. The Af Rabbi Yitzchak Sava oral asa b'maisa. Even Rabbi Yitzchak would hold an oral is asa b'maisa. And answering Rabbi Sheshes Shaila that an oral cannot eat maisa sheni. The Omer Rabbi Yitzchak. That's like Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Sheshes. Now Rabbi Yitzchak minayin la oral she'asa b'maisa. How do you know an oral cannot eat maisa sheni? Nerma mimenu b'maiser. It says the lashon of mimenu by maiser, and then mimenu b'pesach, and it says the lashon of what mimenu by Pesach. It says mimenu by both. So now we have a gezerah shava. Ma mimenu amid Pesach arol, just like mimenu by Pesach, right? Asochle mimenu. It says mimenu 3 times by Pesach. Oral asa, because it's a mafurish pasuk that an oral cannot eat the korban Pesach. Af mimenu amid b'maisa. So to one of the 3 menus, let me barat mimenu. There's 3 mimenus by Maisa. We're going to learn out oral asa boy. Good. So this is very geschmack. This is the way we began the Gemara, fellas. We began the Gemara with the Shaila yesterday. If you might remember with Tosfos, do you learn Kal v'chomer or Chomer v'Kal? What was the question? We know an oral can't eat, an onain cannot go ahead and eat, can't eat the Korban Pesach. Where do you know that from? You know it from the fact that it says Toisha v'Sachir by Pesach, and it says Mimenu by Pesach, and it says Mimenu what by Maisa. So just like an oinen can't eat Maisa, the Kal, the Chomer Pesach can't eat. Conversely, if you learn the Kal v'Chomer Menu, if you learn it's a Kal v'Chomer, you will not be able to learn out that an oral can't eat Meiser. Why not? Because I'll learn out the Chomer from the Kal. I'll learn on Pesach from Meiser. I can't learn out Meiser from Pesach. Madach Pesach and orals asa. So too by Meiser Sheni and orals asa. You can't learn out. Again, I said yesterday, Madach a 4-legged chair could stand. Certainly a 3-legged chair could stand. You can't learn that out. It makes no sense. So therefore, it must be we learn it through a Gezerah Shava, and then there's no question because then the halacha that says by one, it says by the other. So very geschmack. If I learn the Gezerah Shava mimenu, which establishes a relationship between Pesach and Meiser, just like Pesach and oral can't eat, who adin Meiser and oral won't be able to eat. Now you might recall we went through a whole sugya of the Toisha v'Sacher, and we said it has to be that it's mufna, it's extra, because if not, there's a pircha, a question, right? Mal Pesach, there's a din of pigel noiser v'tamei. Mashen came, but Ma'aser Sheni there isn't. So, however, if it's a gezerah shava mufna, meaning if the words are extra, then we don't ask the question, and then we have to get into the question whether it's extra on one side of the gezerah shava or on the second side of the gezerah shava. So, in other words, we're going to have a repeat on this Gemara of the gezerah shava of mimenu, the same Gemara we had by Toisha v'Sachir. And by Toisha v'Sachir, we ended up saying, fellas, that it's a complete mufna because the Toisha v'Sachir by Pesach was extra. We used one for Pesach and one for what? For Truma. We used one for Pesach, one for Truma. Toisha v'Sachir by Pesach, Toisha v'Sachir by Truma, and we learned, and that's the way we learned it out. So we're going to have the exact same Gemara. Hopefully, what I just said rang a bell. If it didn't, then you need Chazara, and if you need Chazara, then Manishtana. Says the Gemara right there. Okay, so Rabbi Yitzchak, Minayin l'oral shasa b'maisa nemo imenu b'maisa nemo imenu b'Pesach. Mami imenu omed Pesach oral asaboy, af imenu omed b'maisa oral asaboy. Mufna, you have to say it's extra. The loy mufna, if it's not extra, ikul mechrich, there's a kasha. Mal Pesach shekein chay v'lo mishum pigel nois b'tamei. These 3 chumras exist by Pesach. They don't exist what by Meiser, and therefore that's why an oral zasa. Says Milai, you're right. You're right. Apnuye mufna, it is extra. Now, my mufna, where's the extra? So Amar Rava, Amar Yitzchak, fellas, it says 3 times Tilsim Mimenu Ksiv Pesach. It says 3 times the lashon of what? By Pesach, it says the lashon Mimenu 3 times. It says 3 times the lashon of Mimenu by Pesach. It says Al Tochlu Mimenu Na, do not eat from it Na, which means half broiled. Like so, sirum mimenu, do not leave over from it. So it says 3 mimenus there. 3 mimenus. Says the. It says over there. It says mimenu a few times. So now, Amar Rav Amar Yitzchak Tilsim mimenu ksiv Pesach Chad legufei, one to teach me al tochlu mimenu na. Now Tosfos points out, guys. Listen to the flow of the pasuk. Listen to the way the pasuk flows in. It says, if ochlu es, it doesn't say this on the side. It says, v'ochlu es habasa b'layla hazeh. You should eat basa this night, sli eish, broiled, Umatzos al meroirim yochluhu, and you should eat it with matzah and maror. Now, segue into the next pasuk. Al tochlu mimenu na. Now, I would say that's going back on matzah and maror, which you just concluded with. Al tochlu mimenu, do not eat it raw. Do not eat the matzah or the maror, right? Raw. So that's what I would have said. So memela, I need al tochlu mimenu to tell me menu from what? The carbon pesach itself, and not from what? From matzah maror. Al tochlu, okay? So therefore I need it, that's legufei. That's how Taisus learns the Gemara. V'chad, I need one of the menus, l'gezer shava. I need one for the gezer shava to meiser. V'chad l'manda amar. Now, there's a third menu, and what do I do with that third menu? V'chad l'manda amar bo hakosav litin l'cha asay achalois asay. So I need the ksiv noiser, ksiv nami menu. Okay, now, fellas, this is again another idea. We know that for a lav, if you are stam a lav that does not carry with it chorus or Mrs. Bezdin, you get what's called malchus. You get malchus. However, there are a few addendums to that. So, for example, it has to be a lav that has a maisa, similar to the lav of chasima. It says malchus after the lav of leisachsim shor bedishay. When you go ahead and you do not muzzle an ox when it's in the threshing floor. So that's an action. If it's not similar to that, it's not an action, you wouldn't get malchus. In addition, there are certain lavim that are lav hanitak la'aseh, that after you do the lav, you're able to go ahead and correct it by doing an aseh. The classic case would be gezela. It says leisigzo, and then it says veheshiv es agzela shegazla, you return it. So you won't get malchus for thievery. Why? Because you can go ahead and correct it. It says there's an opinion of by Noiser, do not leave it over to the morning. So we have machlokes. One says it's a lav shem b'maiser, and therefore you don't get malchus. Another one says it's a lav hanita klasei, because the mandi yomut holds it's a lav hanita, calls you would get malchus for lav shem b'maiser. So I would get malchus normally for noiser, but I can correct it. What? So I have three menus. One to teach me the din of that's not it's that nomi menu, that meaning you can't eat it half baked. Another one for Gezei Shava to Maisa, and the third Gezei Shava to tell me it's a lav. The noiser is a lav that you can go ahead and correct by burning it. So that's the third one according to this opinion. So I need the Ksiv Noiser, Ksiv Nami Menu. There's another opinion. It says twice in the pasuk. So guys, watch this. When do you eat the Korban Pesach? Tesvav at night. Good. When what happens after Chatzos? What happens in the morning? Finished, right? When should you burn it? You should burn it what? That morning. In other words, you should burn it on Pesach itself. Pesach morning, you should burn it. Therefore, it says a second biker to give a biker sheni. Like Susim Menu at biker, by Noisim Menu at biker. What does it say a biker a second time? To tell me a second biker. You don't burn kachim on Yontif. You burn it on Tezayin. You burn it on Chalamoid. You burn it the first day Chalamoid. So there's a question what you do with that second mimenu. So either it's used to teach me a lavanita, or it's used to tell me what a second biker. Good. Those were the three things. Okay. So mandi amalitin le biker shein l'srevasei. I need the ksiv biker ksiv nami mimenu. Okay. So therefore, very good. We have one l'gzev shava. Now it says tilsim mimenu kasi, but kasivi b'maisa. By Maisa, it also says three times. By Maisa, it also says, guys, it says lo yachalti mimenu, v'lo ba'arti mimenu, v'lo nesati. And I didn't give lo nesati mimenu lemes. So it says mimenu three times in the Parsha of Videi Maisus. In Parshas Kisavo, it says the word mimenu three times. So we have three times by Pesach. We know what we do over there. Now we have three times what by Maisa. What do we do over here? Schad legufei, one for itself. That Maisa Rishon is muta be'aninos. That Maisa Rishon is what? Taisus Yishanim. That Maisa Rishon is muta be'aninos. That Maisa Rishon is muta loyachal. Tilsim imenu gesivi, but that Maisa Rishon is muta be'aninos. Guys, Maisa Sheni you can't eat be'aninos. Maisa Rishon you could. Again, just remember, going through what we did yesterday, Maisa Rishon goes to the Levi. Maisa Sheni is what has to be eaten in Yerushalayim. I did not go ahead and eat it. Ba'oni means it's referring to Maisa Sheni. However, Maisa Rishon, you could eat ba'anina. So that's the first one. Chad gufei, that only Maisa Sheni, not Maisa Rishon, yes. V'chad the Rabbi Rabbi Yochanan, and one for Rabbi Yochanan that permitted you to go ahead and use shemen of mimenu. Only the shemen of Ma'aser Sheni you can't go ahead use betuma. Mashen came, if the shemen of truma came betuma, you could use it. Remember, we spoke about using it as a fuel source yesterday. That truma was different. Ma'aser Sheni you can't use as a fuel source, but mimenu you could use truma. And the third thing is what chachad l'deresh lakish. And the third mimenu that is stated by Maisa is used with Inyan Reish Lakish. Nam Reish Lakish, Amar of Samya, Minayim l'Maisa Sheni shenitma shemutal l'saychay. How do you know Maisa Sheni that became Tameh, that it's mutter to smear? Shenemar l'nisati mimenu l'meis. L'meis hu deloy nasati, halachai dumyi d'meis nasati. Okay, Eze davar sheshava b'chayim v'meisim, haviyam is sicha. Okay, for this we have to see Rashi. Okay. Says Rashi, shemutal l'saychay, that you could smear it. V'afagav the kaimalon the sicha kishtia. Even though we say that smearing oil is like drinking, we had this earlier. It's like you did it betuma. Nonetheless, it says I did not use it betame. Meiser that was tame, I did not smear on a mace. But a hana for a chai similar to a mace, Nasati I've given it. The Ezen is seen. Where could you possibly use oil on a chai similar to the way you can use it on a mace? That's smearing. So I'm using it mimenu. For a mace, I can't use it, but for chai, similar to a mace can't eat, so we can't speak about eating it. So it must be speaking about smearing it. I could go ahead and smear it. Okay. So now we have a source, right? We have a source that it's actual Gezerah Shava, but which one? Only from Pesach. One of the mimenus from Pesach was extra, guys. So this is only extra on one side. The mimenu from Maisa, we have three different dinim needed for. So it's not extra mimenu for the Gezerah Shava. So it's not a mufna mishneit sladim. It's not extra on both sides of the Gezerah Shava. Maybe it means that you know what you can do, that you can go ahead. Means that you can't take Ma'aser Sheni money, buy and go ahead sell it and buy tachrichin for the mace. When it says mimenu, it's mashma mikufay from the Ma'aser Sheni itself and not from the money you get from Ma'aser Sheni. In other words, the Ma'aser Sheni means the object itself. So the shemen of the Ma'aser Sheni is itself. Tachrichin for a mace would be that you had to take it and be poider it on money. So and then buy tachrichin, that not. So Rashi Sati dumyid lo yachalti. Mala halam begufay, avkan begufay. It says the word just like Rashi says, when Sati dumyid lo yachalti, I did not put it on a mace and not eating it. Mala halam begufay, speaking about eating the thing, avkan begufay, as opposed to what you bartering it to buy something tachrichin for the mace. Fred the Gemara. So now you guys getting back to the shaila again. You always go back to the shaila. Is an oral mutta be maisa. Rav Yitzchak says we have a Gezerah Shava from Korban Pesach. Mimenu that it's not. Why? Because we have an extra mimenu by Korban Pesach. We do not have an extra mimenu by Meiser. The kati mufti mitzad echad. It's only mufna on one side. Again, we have a kasha on the Gezerah Shava. Ma Pesach that shekain pigol meiser v'tamei. Says the Gemara. Hanich l'madiyama l'meidim. Very good. L'madiyama says that if it's extra on one side, you'll learn the Gezerah Shava. Very geschmack. We learn it. We don't ask any questions. So even though we have the questions of Mala Pesach, it's what Chayav Pigol Meiser V'Tamei. We're not going to ask it because the menu by Pesach is extra. You learn it, but you ask a question. So we're learning the Gezerah Shava. We got a kasha Mala Pesach. Yesh Pigol Meiser V'Tamei. Says the Gemara. Okay, we do have an extra. Rabbi Vu's din regarding that truma, you want to learn out that Maisa you can't have enough from, but truma you could have enough from if it's tamei. That I can learn out from another source. That would make the mimenu extra by Meiser, and then I'd have it extra wide on both stadim. Again, We use mimenu for three things, right? We want the chad l'gufei, right? We use what? One l'gufei that ma'aser rishon you could have ana, even if you're an onain, ma'aser rishon. One ravo is din tomata using a fuel source of truma, and one for reish lakish is din of smearing for a mace. Good, smearing on a live person. Great. Now, Rebbe Vo, if that's extra, if I learn that from another source that's in a truma, I have mimenu extra by Maisa. If I have it in the menu extra by Maisa, then I have it on both stadim. The Omer of Nachman, Omer Abavua, my dechsiv, I've given you to watch my trumois. The state trumas are custom medaber. I've given you to watch two trumois. Achas truma tahira, achas truma tameya. One truma tahira and one truma tameya. What is the halacha truma tameya? It says nasati lecha. That truma tamei will be yours. What does that mean? Lahasaka tehei tavshilcha. That you'll be able to go ahead and cook your tavshilim, your cooked foods using it. So now that I have that as a source, I have one of mimenus extra by Meiser, and now I have Mishteit Stadim, one mimenu extra by Korim Pesach, one extra mimenu by Meiser, and then I can learn out just like Meiser Einins Asa, so to Pesach Einin Asa, and just like Pesach Oral is Asa. Who had din Maisa oral would be asa to eat Maisa Sheni. So we conclude our Gemara and this Shaila that took us a blot and a half. Okay, so the Shaila, what the halacha is, I don't know. I did not look it up. But again, mashma from the mashma of the Gemara, we have a shittas Rabbi Yitzchak. Again, we have a shittas Rabbi Yitzchak, shittas Rabbi Akiva, shittas Rabbi Sheshes. We have three people going and saying that it's asa. Now, the next thing of the Mishnah was Chola Tameim, anyone who's Tamei cannot eat Truma. Where do you know that from? The Chola Tameim, right? Where do you know that from? How do you know that Tameim cannot go ahead and eat Truma? So again, we have our faithful pasuk, says the Gemara, Mina Hanimili, Am Rabbi Yechon, Mishon Rabbi Shmuel, Om Akra. The pasuk says what? Ish Mizera Aroin, a person from the children of Aroin, Vahut Sarua, he's a Mitzayra, Oizav, where he has a flow. By Kodshim, by Truma Layochel Yishanit, Adashe Yidhar until he becomes Tahar. Okay, that's the source. So it says the Gemara, Ezu Dava Sheshava Bizarre Shel Aroin. What it says, Ishish Mizera Aroin. How do you know it's speaking about Truma? So it's speaking about something that is equal to all the children of Aroin. Haviyom is that Truma. What do you mean all the Zera of Aroin? Says Rashi, is the Charim Munakevois. That what is the food that is equal? It's truma. Say a male kohen can eat it or a kohenes can eat it. The ilu kachri kedoshim, as we saw earlier, chatas and an asham, or that can be consumed, hanitanu lekahanim, ein necholim elu lezacha kahuna. They can only be eaten by males. That was the meshachach we brought in the other day, based on Mikdash, right? Okay, so very geschmack. So you have a pasuk, an open pasuk that says zera aroin, matz equals zera aroin. It's truma, and it says la yochal. You should eat it when you're tamei. Fred the Gemara the ema bechazav v'shoik. Right now, the chazav v'shoik is eaten by all males and females. It's double hushva. The chaza is the chest. The shoik is the back foot of a korban shlomim. That's eaten by everybody, males and females. So maybe that's what it's speaking about. But truma, you could eat betuma. No, it's your whole source is something that's equal to zera of Aaron. I just given you something that's equal to zera of Aaron. What? Kachim kalim, the chaz of a shaykh. And for the Gemara, ain't a well, it's not true that it's always eaten. We said that if a Bas Kohen marries a Yisrael and has no children, she can go back and eat truma. She can't go back to eat chaz v'shaik. She loses that right permanently. So therefore, it's not equal because there's a heichet timsa where a female will not be able to eat the chaz v'shaik. Ein b'chayzeres. If she goes back to daddy, she's not going to eat the chaz v'shaik. For the Gemara, trumanami ein b'chalala. So if that's the case, the zera of Aaron, not all of the zera of Aaron eat truma. A gerusha marries a kohen. Almana marries a kohen gadol. They have a child. That child's a chalala. That child can't eat truma. Says Gemara, chalala loves zera of Aaron. He chalala is not the zera of Aaron. Good. Now, what does the pasuk say, guys? The pasuk says, Medoyik ish mizera arayin v'hu tzarua zav b'kotchem le'yachal ada sheyitar. Ada sheyitar means until what? The sun sets. Fredi Gemara umimayda haya sheyitar ad ikaher shemesh ema ad maisi kapara. In other words, why are we being so lenient on this guy? We're telling the kohen became tamei. Again, this is the first Mishnah in Masechta Brachos, right? Rashi brings the kahanim that were tamei, right? And when they eat their truma at night, that's the time you could say Kriyash Mashal Arvis. Fred the Gemara, how do you know? Just they go to the mikveh during the day, what's called a tful yom, wait till night. Maybe they have to bring a carbon. Maybe until they bring a carbon. It says you can't think that. The Tana de Rabbi Yishmael, it says, now again, what does the pasuk say, guys? Sarua, Vizov, and Mitzayra. Okay, let's go back outside, guys. Outside. The ideas that we all know from Masechta Megillah. Ma bein Zov bal shtei re'iyos, Vizov bal shalosh re'iyos. A Zov that sees twice, he's tamei for 7 days, but he doesn't bring a carbon. A Zav that sees 3 times, he's tamei 7 days and brings the carbon on the 8th. Ma bein mitzayra muchlit and mitzayra muskar. A mitzayra muchlit is put away until he's cured, and then he brings karbanis. A mitzayra that's muskar put away, he'll put away for and then the kohen rechecks. If he's clean, he doesn't bring karbanis. So we have a mitzayra that doesn't bring karbanis. We have a Zav doesn't bring karbanis. Now let's look at our pasuk, guys. Let's look at our pasuk. Ish, you want to say the following. You want to say that it's speaking about mechusa kapara, correct? That asher yuta means to bring a kapara. If you look at the pasuk and you look into the pasuk, you can't possibly say that. Why? Ish mizera arayin, again from the children of Arayin, and again that's dafka, the ones who eat the equal truma, v'hu tzarua, and he is a mitzoira muskar, meaning we haven't ascertained whether he has to bring a carbon or not. Zav, he's a Zav that brings 2 that saw twice, so he doesn't bring a carbon. But Kochem lo yoichal, he can't eat truma until the sun sets. You know why it doesn't mean kapara? Because the Zav and Mitzayra over here are not bringing a kapara. They don't bring a carbon. Beautiful drasha, guys. No, it's looking at the pasuk. The people in the pasuk that are on the description, you can't possibly say that they're not tar until they bring their carbon, because they're not b'nei carbon inu. And therefore, if it's speaking about truma, it must be arashayita. It must be describing herev shemesh, the setting of the sun, rather than being a karbanis, because there are no karbanis to be brought. Okay, that's what the Gemara. That's the limud. Tani Rabbi Yishmael bizav, when the pasuk says zav bal shtei, it's speaking about a zav bal shtei. Over mitzayra muskar, it's speaking of mitzayra that was put away and doesn't bring a carbon. Akasim medaber. Dumya tamei nefesh, similar to tamei nefesh. Ma tamei nefesh the lav bar kaparahu. Just like tamei nefesh is, again, they don't bring karbanis. A tamei nefesh doesn't bring karbanis. It's, again, guys, a very good way to remember it. A tamei nefesh is not tamei from something that came out of his body. He's tamei from an external source, not an internal source. The Chusik Kippurim is always an internal source. The mitzvah comes from his body. The zav comes from his body. The baby, the yoledes, comes from the body. It's always a tumah from the body, an internal tumah. So therefore, that's how you know, guys. Because again, how do you know it's speaking about shtei re'iyos and muskar? Because if you look at the pasuk, says v'nageh b'chol tamei nefesh. It says, in anyone who touches b'chol tamei nefesh. So just like the latter part of the pasuk is not speaking about a person that brings a carbon, so to the first part of the pasuk is speaking about a person that doesn't bring a carbon. Okay, so let's just recap what we said until this point in time. The second din of the Mishnah is the din that what a tamei cannot eat kachim, cannot eat truma. How do you know it's had Fred the Gemara? How do you know it's speaking about truma? It says this is zera shalaroin. How do you know it's zera shalaroin? Maybe it's chaz b'shoik, which is not equal to, the Gemara concludes that no, it's speaking about someone who chaz v'shoy can't be, because a female this time she can't eat it. It can't be speaking about a halala because he's not zera shalaroin. So now the other part of the pasuk says arashe yitar, and we say until the sun sets. How do you know it means until the sun sets? Maybe it means until it brings his kapara. And for the Gemara, from the pasuk itself, the text of the pasuk, we derive it's speaking about a person who doesn't mean kapara, because it compares a zav and mitzayra to someone's tamei nefesh. Just like a tamei nefesh is not bringing a carbon because it's an external source, so too, even though the zav and the mitzayra are internal sources, it's speaking ones that do not bring a carbon. A baal shtei re'iyos by a zav and a mitzayra musker by a mitzayra. And therefore, Ada Shayita must be referring to Herav Shemesh rather than Kapara. Says the Gemara, "Ve'emahani mili delav bar kapara, aval de bar kapara adamaisi kapara." Okay. Now you said a carte blanche statement that a kohen can eat truma, right? A kohen can eat truma when what? When the sun sets. Doesn't make a difference. Let's say the kohen is a mitzayra. Let's say the kohen is a baal shalosh re'iyos and he has to bring a carbon. How do you know that he can go ahead what? And eat beher shemesh and not wait till he brings the carbon? Very good. If he's not a bar kapara, I can understand Herav Shemesh does the job. How do you know it does the job even by a person who's mechusik kippurim, a kohen whose tuma is internal? How do you know that he could eat truma even before he brings his carbon? How do you know that? V'su hadit nan. Okay, now these are three types of tuma. There's three possibilities. A person who goes to the mikvah and is tahar, a person who has to wait to Herav Shemesh, and a person who has to wait for what? For bringing a carbon. Hadit nan. Tavel v'ala oichel b'maiser. A person that's tamei, he goes to the mikvah, he's at full yaim, he eats maiser. Herav Shemshoi, he waits till Herav Shemesh, oichel b'truma. Hevi kapara, he brings his carbon, oichel b'kachim. Minalon, how do you know that? So Amar Rava, Amar Rav Chisda, Tilsa Kroy Ksivi. I got three psukim, and each pasuk is going to correlate with the three types of tuma. Ksiv, it says, "V'lo yochal min hakachim, ki im rochatz b'sara b'mayim." And you can't eat kachim only if he what? Doesn't go to the mikvah. Harachatz, but if he does go to the mikvah, mashma tahar. So that's going to be speaking about meiser guys. That's going to the mikvah is enough. Ukasiv, in addition, it says Uba Hashemesh, the sun sets for Taher, and he'll be Taher. So here we have a Tumah that it's the contingent upon Herav Shemesh. Ukasiv, okay. Then you have a third one, V'chipor Lav HaKayin V'Tahera. It says by Yoledes that the Kayin will go ahead and be Mechapa for her, and she'll be Tahera. So you have three descriptions of what? Of Taira. One just by going to the mikvah, one by the sun setting, and one what? By the claim being the carbon. Haketzad. How do we go ahead and apply this? Kan lemaisa. Stamazoi, when you go to the mikvah, that's going to matter you maisa sheni. Kan letruma, Herav Shemesh for truma, and kan lekachim, and one kapara will be for kachim. So those are the three psukim describing. So again, this is first base of Tumah B'Tayra and Kachim. It's very good to know. Very good to know. Mamish, very good to know. Fred the Gemara now, the Epach. Let's switch around Truma and Maisa and say Truma you could eat what with just going to the mikvah, and Maisa Sheni will require a Herav Shemesh. It says, Mistabra Truma Adifa. Truma is more Svardic to say it's more Chomer. Shekain Machpaz. Misa, Chaimesh, Pidyon, Zorim. Adraba, Maisa Adifa, Shekain Hadas Tov. What is that in the Trikin for? Hey is for you have to have Havos Makim, you have to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. Dalit is for Vidoy, there's Vidoy Maisvis. Samich is Asal Oinein. Tes is Tuma that for itself. That Tuma itself you can't use it for. And Beis is beer. Moish, I'm saying share now. I'll call you back, okay? Or call me back in 15 minutes. Call me back in 15. Okay? In other words, similar to what we've been doing until now, given our druthers, why do you to go and say the more chama requiring Herav Shemesh is truma? Why don't you say the more chama is maisa? Says the Gemara, no, I got a chart over here that says machpaz. Well, I have a chart over here that says hadas tov. Says the Gemara, afilu hachi misa adifa. Since there's no misa associated with the consumption of meiser, bituma, Therefore, what? It's not as severe as truma, which carries with it misa b'dei shemayim if you're a zar. Rava Omar, Rava says, "B'loy misa adifa nami le'matzazamid." Even without the misa that is inherent by truma, still there's no svara to say that Maisa Sheni should be more chamen at truma to require hair of shemesh. Amakra, the pasuk says, and this pasuk is Vayikra Chaf Beis Vav, Nefesh Ashiga Batame Ada Erev. Okay, let me give you this pasuk over here. Okay, guys, listen to this parsha. Ish mizera aron, our pasuk, v'utzura izov, b'kotchem le'yochal, is speaking about what? It's speaking about obviously the kahanim. That's pasuk dalet. Pasuk hey, ish asher yiga b'chol sheretz asher yitmaloi, oy ba'adam asher yitmaloi, l'chol tumasoi. So I would say it's speaking still about kahanim. Then it says nefesh asher tiga ba b'tama ada erev. And then it says the word nefesh asher tigu ba b'tamei ada erev. Good. So that's the sequence. So it says Rava the following. Says Rava the following. Because of this pasuk, I can't possibly go ahead and entertain the idea. I can't entertain the idea that Maisa Sheni would require hair of shemesh and not truma. The pasuk again. That says enough, it's enough to go to the mikvah. It says nefesh ashiga ba, mashma, that's something that is noig b'chol nefesh. Eze davar sheshava b'chol nefesh. What is noig that's b'chol nefesh, meaning sai kahanim, sai Yisraelim? Haviyam is zemaisa sheni. So the pasuk that describes going to the mikvah and being tahar, it says the word nefesh. Yes? So now, nefesh is mashma something that's equal b'chol nefesh. Truma is not equal b'chol nefesh. What would you want to say, guys? We have three madregas, right? We have the mikvah, we have the sun, and we have the carbon. You want to now, we're discussing the first two. The first one we said is Maisa, the second one is Truma. Fred Gemara, let's switch it around. Let's say Truma, it's enough to go to the mikvah, and let's say what? Let's say Herav Shemesh. Good? Says the Gemara, the pasuk that says going to the mikvah has to be speaking about Maisa, because it says Nefesh, which is the food stuff that's equal b'chol nefesh. It's not truma, only a kohen can eat truma. So it must be speaking what about something, must be speaking about Maisa. And it says going to the mikvah is enough. So I don't need the list. This is the same common limud we've had until now, right? We have lists. This is hanafishin, this is not hanafishin, this is mochamer. Even without the list, from the pasuk itself, I can ascertain that it's speaking about Maisa enough, just going to the mikvah and not truma. Because it says the word nefesh. You'll ask, back to our original question. That is what, if the kohen does not bring a carbon, then herav shemesh is enough. I would say to eat truma, you'd have to bring what? Your kapara, you'd have to bring your carbon, and it's not enough herav shemesh. Amar Abaya, says Abaya, right? Now, just to understand, let's be magda the din of a yoledes before we bring this raya. Again, we want to bring a raya to the following. Guys, look at me. We said a carte blanche din. A kohen who goes to the mikvah can eat truma in the evening regardless of his status. Even if he's not totally tahar, he can't eat kachim because he has an internal tumah, a zav, a mitzayra. Nonetheless, it doesn't make a difference. He can eat truma that evening. How do you know that? How do you know that? Okay, so the parsha of Yoledes is like this. A woman, when she gives birth, male and female, let's go with the male first, and then we're going to double it the female. For male, she's tamei for 7 days. Any blood she sees after 7 days for the next 33 days is dam tahar. And she could even live with her husband. She goes to the mikveh after 7 days. After 33 days, the 40th day, then she brings her kabbanis. So she's considered a full yoim for that period of time. By Nekev, it's 14 days and 66, a total of 80. So that's called a full yoim arucha. She went to the mikvah after 7 by a male. She went to the mikvah after 14 by a female. And then she's going to be eating truma all the way. Okay, so now, Says the Gemara, I'm going to buy a tray kroy ksiv. By Yoledis, there's two psukim. Be Yoledis. Ksiv, it says, Ad melos yemei tahira, until she fulfills the day of Tahira. Mashma, kimit shemola yemei tahara, since she finished those 33 days or the 66 days she's tahar. Uksiv, the chibra lav hakoyin v'tahira. The koyin brings the carbon and she's tahar. So you see, one depends upon days, and one goes ahead depends upon what? Kapara. Okay, sad. Kan le truma, kan le kachin. Beautiful, beautiful limit, guys. A yoledis has two stages where she becomes tahar. One after the days are finished counting, and one after the koyin brings the carbon. Why do you see that despite the fact that she has an internal tumah, she's a yoledis, she's able to eat truma after yemei tahira. Again, what the sun is for a regular tful yoim, the counting of the days is to the Tovelis Yoim Arucha. She's not going to the mikveh again. After 33 days, she's eating truma. After 66 days by Nekeva, she's eating truma. Why? Hello, what do you see from there? Despite the fact that she can't eat kachim till the koyin brings the carbon, because she's a mechusa kapara, missing a carbon, she still eats truma despite the fact. So you can't have a havamina to say that that one person who has an internal tumah who require a carbon would not be able to eat truma until you bring the carbon from Yoledes, because Yoledes describes two stages of Taira. One stage dependent upon days, one stage depending upon bringing the carbon. This is speaking about truma, even though she has to bring a carbon. This is speaking about kachim. Geschmack is anything. Beautiful. Gemara, the Blumdus, the Gemara is gorgeous. Mamish, Torah Shebal Peh, Torah Shebal Peh. I was just learning this, preparing it. The beauty of Torah, how it dissects Chumash, and how could you possibly learn a pasuk in Chumash without unless you learn Gemara? It's Pella. It's wondrous. Now the Gemara is going to ask the obvious question, the same question we had by Maisa and Truma. We're going to ask by Kachim and Truma. In other words, let's say she can eat Kachim after she finishes her days, and let's say she can only eat truma after you bring the carbon. In other words, we're questioning the given. The given we know is that you can eat maisa after you go to mikvah. You can eat truma after mikvah and herav shemesh, and you can eat kachim after mechus kipurim. Well, we're questioning that. So we're questioning this. We first questioned the first two dinim, maisa, truma. Now we're questioning the second two dinim, truma and kachim. Says the Gemara, the epich. Let's say the opposite. The epich hana. Let's switch it around and say I can eat kachim after Yemos Mei Tahira, and I can only eat truma after the Chibur Lav HaKayim. So Mistaber Kodesh Chomer. Mistaber Kodesh is more chomer than truma. Shekain, Pigel, Noiser. We had this yesterday. Carbon that's brought inside, Meila, and Karis, and Einin, right? And the last one is of Asal Einin. It's Asal to an Einin, right? Says the Adarabba, Truma Chamur Shekain Machbaz, Misa, Chaimesh, Pidyon, Zorim. Good. Says the Hanech Nefishin. Same teretz. Listen, if I have to be Machmer, I'll say Kachim is more Chomer than Truma. Because why? Because of the list. What's the Gemara going to do now? Even without the list, I'll bring you a pasuk. The Gemara is repetitious. It's beautiful. It's beautiful that way. Stylistically, it's a template for understanding Gemara. Rava Amar, there's no way you can tell me that truma would be mochamer, that it would require what? Mechus kapara, and kachim would be less, and you'd be able to bring it what? Just after herav shemesh. Or just after counting the days. Amakra, the chipar Allah kayhain v'tahera. And the kohen will be mechapah for her, and she'll be tahar. Mechal she tameya. V'yisak gedayt bekachim ikri kan v'abasa sheyiga b'chol tamei lo yochel. Elishmamina b'truma. Hey guys, watch. What are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me that as soon as the days are over, she can eat kachim. We call a yoledes mechutz kipura that she's tamei. If she's tamei, she can't touch kachim. So how could you possibly say that what? So her level of tumah would not passel truma. It would passel kachim. So therefore, you won't be able to eat it. So how can you possibly think that what? That just counting the days it's full yom should eat kachim. Only mechutz kippurim can eat kachim because of the level of tumah. So therefore, without the list of pankas versus machpaz, we have from the pasuk itself, al korchak, that mechutz kippurim must be speaking about kachim, because if it's speaking about a truma and therefore herav shemesh or counting the days is speaking about kachim, you won't be able to touch it. You won't be able to eat it. Says the Gemara, Maskavler of Shisha Breda Vivi. Umi Matzis Amra Truma Ksivi Hacha. Could you go ahead and possibly say that this pasuk is speaking about Truma? It says, Vatanya, it says at the beginning of the Parsha, Dabe by Yoledes. You're speaking by Yoledes, speaking about, guys, what are you telling? Where are we learning it from? By Yoledes, there's two stages. Ad Yemos Yemecha, days, and then you're telling me the Chibur Bakayim. How could you say that the Parsha of Yoledes is regarding a Truma at all? How could you say that? Because you're saying the pasuk of Ad Yemos Yemecha is speaking about eating Truma. How could you say it's speaking about Truma at all? It says, it's the beginning of the pasuk says, Daber El Bnei Yisrael. So when it says El Bnei Yisrael, so therefore the Tumas Yoledes, Ella by an Isha who's called Bnei Yisrael. Giyoris, V'shivcha Mishuchreches. How do you know a Giyoris or a freed Shivcha? How do you know that there's a parsha of Isha Kisazriya of the Yolda Zacha in the Keva, and we'll have the 733 and the 1466? How do you know that? Tamid Loimar, Isha Kisazriya. When it says Isha Kisazriya, it comes to be marba any woman. Now, how do you know it's not speaking about Truma? If you're selling this parsha speaking about Truma, guys, a shivcha and a giyoris, what do we know by now? They're Zionis. Le'inyan Truma, they're Zionis. A kohen can't marry them. The only way a Bas Yisrael could eat Truma is when she marries a kohen. These two women cannot marry a kohen. Why? Because they're halachically zonos, right? Their fact that there were other men would passel them le'inyan Truma. So Fred Gemara, beautiful kasha. We have the Parsha Yoledes. You're telling me the Parsha Yoledes is telling me that when she fulfills her days, she's at full Yom Aruch, she can eat Truma. How can it be speaking about Truma? It's speaking about a Giyoris and a Shivcha. Because Yoledes the Tumas Yoledes applies to them too, yet they can't eat Truma. As I read the Gemara. That's what the Gemara is asking me. Says the Gemara, Visal Kedaitach again, that it's speaking about what? The Parsha of Yoledes, Truma, Giyoris, Shivcha, B'nai Smechel, Truma, Ninu. So Amar Rabbi says, Rabbi, V'lo Yom and Aleph. It says, the pasuk says, "V'ksiv b'chol kodesh leisika." In the parsha, it also says, "In all kodesh you shouldn't touch," and that comes to be marbet truma. So you see that what? That a shivcha is yoledes is Isaac with truma. It says he shouldn't be touched truma. Ella, what do you have to say? You have to say mili mili kachashiv. Don't make it one big cholent. Mili mili kachashiv. In other words, the beginning of the parsha that's discussing tumas yoledes. You know what that's discussing? Whether it's a woman that was a Jew by birth, whether it was a Giyoris or a Shifra that was freed and became Jews, they have the Tumah of a Yoledes of 733 for a boy, 1466 for a girl. The next parsha regarding Tumah, the most made Tahira, the Chibur Bakayim, that's speaking about Truma, that's speaking about Kachim, and it's the Mili Katani. One has nothing to do with the other. Okay, I wish everyone a great Shabbos.